What would you do if the scars of your past became the target of cruel laughter? For Sarah Mitchell, a wounded veteran with a story etched into her very skin, this nightmare unfolds on a train ride that will change her life forever. 15 years after surviving a deadly ambush in Helmand, Sarah still rises at 5 a.m., her body a loyal soldier to the rhythm of her military past. In her modest apartment in Cincinnati, Ohio, every item is meticulously placed, her medals tucked away in a drawer, the American flag folded with precision, and a handful of photos of her Bravo Company comrades adorning the wall. The quiet order soothes the storm that sometimes rages in her mind, a storm born from the explosion that claimed her right leg and left a jagged scar across her cheek. This morning, Sarah sips coffee from a faded army mug, her prosthetic leg clicking softly as she moves through adapted stretches. For the first time in nearly a year, she's agreed to visit her brother in Pittsburgh, a trip she's been avoiding. Her role as a physical therapist for veterans at the Cincinnati VA Medical Center has consumed her, leaving little room for rest. Dressed in a simple sweater, jeans, and a navy jacket, she adjusts the military medallion at her collar, a talisman of her service, and glances at her reflection. The scar on her cheek, a brutal reminder of Helmand, stares back. The train to Pittsburgh departs at 7:30 a.m., and Sarah arrives at the station with time to spare, her need for precision as sharp as ever. She boards the train, choosing a window seat near the middle, a habit from her combat days. Always aware of exits, always watching. Passengers file in, a young couple, a student with earbuds, and then a group of high schoolers in crisp uniforms, their laughter echoing through the carriage. Sarah feels a familiar tension in her chest as their noise grows. She pulls out a biography of Clara Barton, hoping to lose herself in the pages. The train departs on time, and as the Ohio landscape rolls by, trees tinged with the amber hues of early fall, Sarah wonders what this journey will bring. Now, imagine you're Sarah, a veteran who's faced gunfire but now faces the sting of judgment. The teenagers' laughter grows louder, their eyes on you. What would you do next? Option 1. Confront them calmly, sharing your story to demand respect. Or Option 2. Stay silent, hoping they tire of their game? Let us know in the comments. Write Option 1 or Option 2 to share your choice. And if you're moved by stories of courage and redemption, please subscribe to Daily Narrated Stories. We're on a mission to reach 1,000 subscribers soon. Join us and never miss a story that could change your perspective. The journey begins peacefully, with Sarah losing herself in Clara Barton's life, the rolling countryside a soothing backdrop. The hum of the train and the faint scent of diesel fuel mix with the rustle of pages as she reads, the words a temporary shield against the world. An hour in, the train stops in Akron for a brief break. Passengers disembark to stretch or grab coffee, and Sarah steps onto the platform, her prosthetic leg steady but noticeable as she paces near the door, the cool air brushing against her scar. The high schoolers, 5 boys and 2 girls, return, their energy heightened by sugary drinks, their laughter louder, more reckless. Their chatter turns into a game, targeting passengers with whispered mockery. Look at that guy with the briefcase. Bet he's a wannabe CEO. One girl giggles, her voice sharp and cutting through the hum of the platform. Sarah watches them from the corner of her eye, her military instincts on alert, but she brushes it off. She's faced worse than teenage snark, far worse. Then, a boy named Ethan, with sharp features, tousled blonde hair, and a cocky grin, points at Sarah as they reboard. What's with her? She walks like a broken toy, he says, loud enough for the words to sting, his voice carrying a cruel edge that slices through the carriage. Sarah keeps her eyes on her book, her training kicking in. Teenagers won't rattle a soldier who's faced combat, but their words sharpen, each one a small dagger aimed at her vulnerabilities. Check out that scar on her face. A girl with long braids whispers loudly, her tone laced with disgust, her eyes glinting with morbid fascination. Looks like someone tried to carve her up. Gross. Sarah's throat tightens, the scar on her cheek burning under their imagined scrutiny. She counts to 10, a technique her therapist taught her to manage triggers, her fingers gripping the edges of her book so hard the pages crinkle. The memory of that day in Helmand flashes unbidden, the searing heat of the explosion, the acrid smell of burning metal, the screams of her squad as she dragged herself forward, determined to save the wounded. She can still feel the grit of sand in her mouth, the weight of her rifle against her shoulder, the desperation in her chest as she shouted orders over the chaos. She forces herself back to the present, her jaw tight, refusing to let these kids see her falter. "Hey, lady, what happened to your face?" Ethan calls, his voice dripping with mockery, his grin widening as the others laugh, their voices a cruel chorus echoing down the carriage. "Please, keep it down," Sarah says evenly, not looking up, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. She's fought in war zones. She won't be undone by childish taunts. "Oh," she speaks. Another boy, a shorter one with glasses, chimes in, his tone mocking, his laughter sharp and biting. With that accent, bet she's from nowhere important. Sarah's chest tightens further, the words hitting a nerve she thought she'd buried. She grew up in a small rural town, her accent a remnant of a life before the military, a life where she dreamed of making a difference. Now, that same accent marks her as an outsider to these privileged kids, their words a reminder of how the world often judges what it doesn't understand. She breathes deeply, focusing on the rhythm of her inhales and exhales, willing herself to stay calm. The train rumbles on, the Ohio landscape outside a blur of amber and gold, but inside, the air grows heavier with each passing minute, the tension coiling tighter. The taunts continue, quieter but cutting, each word a fresh wound. "She's probably broke. Look at her clothes." Ethan sneers, his voice low but pointed, meant for her to hear, his eyes glinting with malicious delight. Heading to Pittsburgh to beg on the streets. They notice her medallion, the small silver piece glinting at her collar, a symbol of her service she's worn every day since her discharge. "Look, Army tags," a girl with a high ponytail exclaims, her tone a mix of fascination and derision, her finger pointing as if Sarah is a specimen in a zoo. Bet she's one of those crazy vets who can't cope. Sarah closes her book with a soft thud, her therapist's words echoing in her mind. "You have the right to set boundaries." She turns to them, her hazel eyes steady but burning with a quiet fire, the kind that's carried her through firefights and sleepless nights. "You don't know me. Please respect the other passengers and lower your voices." Her tone is calm, measured, but there's an edge to it, a strength that comes from years of leading soldiers under pressure, a strength these kids can't begin to comprehend. Ethan smirks, his green eyes glinting with mischief, clearly enjoying the reaction he's provoked. "Oh, she's mad. Gonna report us for noise." His friends snicker, but the young mother sitting a few rows ahead shoots the group a disapproving look, her baby stirring in her arms, her lips pressed into a thin line of frustration. Sarah notices the mother's expression, a flicker of gratitude passing through her, a silent acknowledgement of shared struggle. But the teenagers don't stop. "Look at her leg. It's fake." The girl with braids gasps, spotting the prosthetic as Sarah shifts in her seat, the hem of her jeans riding up slightly, revealing the sleek metal where her calf should be. "Bet it's some cheap knockoff." Another girl, with freckles and a cruel smile, adds, "That scar probably scares kids. Freaky." Sarah's heart races, not with anger but with a deep, aching sadness that threatens to swallow her whole. She lost her leg saving Liv's and Hellman, 2 local medics and a civilian caught in an ambush, their terrified faces etched into her memory. She can still hear their pleas, the crackle of gunfire, the moment she realized she couldn't save them all, the weight of that failure a constant companion. Now, she's a target for privileged kids who've never known hardship, their words a cruel reminder of how the world sometimes sees her, not as a hero, but as a broken thing. Ethan leans forward, his grin cruel, his voice louder now, carrying over the hum of the train, his words sharp enough to draw blood. "I saw this on TV. Bet's like her come back broken, end up on the streets." The words hit like a punch, and Sarah's mind reels. She thinks of the veterans she works with at the VA, men and women who fought not just in war, but against the stigma that follows them home. She thinks of James, a Marine who lost both legs in Iraq, who told her during a therapy session how a stranger once called him a burden at a grocery store, his voice breaking as he recounted the shame. She thinks of Maria, a Navy vet with PTSD, who broke down in her office last month, ashamed of her struggle to hold a job, her hands trembling as she clutched a tissue. These kids don't know the battles fought long after the war ends, the quiet courage it takes to keep going, to get up each day and face a world that often looks away. The young mother finally speaks up, her voice sharp and protective, her eyes flashing with indignation. "That's enough. Show some respect. You're upsetting my child." She rocks her baby, who's begun to fuss. The soft cries a stark contrast to the teenager's harsh laughter. The group quiets briefly, some of them shifting uncomfortably in their seats, their faces flushed with a mix of guilt and defiance. But Ethan's defiance lingers, his smirk unwavering, as if he's daring Sarah to react, his posture challenging her to break. The tension in the carriage is palpable now, the other passengers stealing glances, some with sympathy, others with unease, their whispers a low hum beneath the clatter of the train. Sarah feels their eyes on her, and for a moment, she's back in Hellmand, under the scrutiny of her squad after the explosion, some looking at her with awe for her bravery, others with pity for what she'd lost, their voices hushed as they debated whether she'd ever walk again. She shakes off the memory, focusing on the present, her hands steady despite the storm inside. Something shifts in Sarah, not rage, but resolve, a quiet determination that's carried her through the darkest moments of her life, a resolve forged in the crucible of war. She stands, gripping the seat for balance, her prosthetic legs steady beneath her, the faint click of metal against the floor a testament to her survival. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I was a sergeant in Bravo Company, serving 3 tours in Afghanistan. Yes, this is a prosthetic." She taps her leg, the sound dull and deliberate, echoing in the now silent carriage, a sound that speaks of sacrifice and resilience. "I lost it saving lives in a firefight, and this scar came with it. Are you satisfied?" The train falls silent, even the young couple turning to listen, their expressions a mix of shock and respect, their hands clasped tightly together. "I don't expect you to understand service, but I expect basic respect for me and these passengers." She sits, her pulse pounding, but her dignity intact, her posture unyielding, a soldier still, even here, even now. The teenagers are quiet, some looking ashamed, their heads bowed, their earlier bravado replaced by a heavy silence. Ethan's expression remains hard, his jaw tight as he stares out the window, his hands clenched into fists, a storm of his own brewing beneath the surface. The rest of the trip is uneventful, the silence heavy, broken only by the rhythmic clatter of the train on the tracks. Sarah stares out at the passing landscape, the trees now a deeper shade of gold, their beauty a stark contrast to the ugliness she just endured. She thinks of her squad in Bravo Company, Lieutenant Carter, who taught her how to play poker during downtime, his laughter booming across the desert camp, Specialist Reyes, who sang off-key to keep morale up, his voice a beacon in the darkness, and Private Nguyen, who didn't make it out of that ambush in Hellmand, his quiet smile a memory that haunts her. She remembers the last time she saw Nguyen, his grin as he handed her a letter for his sister, asking her to mail it if anything happened, his voice soft but firm, trusting her with his final words. She did mail it, weeks later, from a hospital bed in Germany, her hands trembling as she wrote a note of her own, promising Nguyen's sister that he'd died a hero, her tears staining the paper as she sealed the envelope. The memory brings a lump to her throat, and she blinks back tears, refusing to let them fall in this carriage, under the watchful eyes of strangers, her resolve a shield against the pain. At Pittsburgh Station, Sarah waits for everyone to disembark before leaving, her movements deliberate, her head held high, her scar a badge of honor she refuses to hide. As she passes the teenagers on the platform, Ethan watches her, his face unreadable, not mocking, but something else, a flicker of something she can't quite place. Is it guilt? Curiosity? Perhaps the dawning of understanding? She doesn't linger to find out, her focus shifting to the familiar figures waiting for her. Her brother, Daniel, stands with his 6-year-old daughter, Mia, who runs to Sarah with a squeal, her pigtails bouncing, her small arms outstretched. "Aunt Sarah, can you do the card trick?" Sarah smiles, ruffling Mia's hair, the simple joy of her niece's embrace grounding her, a tether to the present amidst the storm of the past. "Of course, sweetie. I'm here until Monday." Daniel hugs her, his brow furrowing as he studies her face, his eyes searching for the truth she won't voice. "You look exhausted. Rough trip." "Nothing new," Sarah replies, sparing Mia the details, though the weight of the journey lingers in her chest, a heaviness she can't shake. Daniel's home in Squirrel Hill is a stark contrast to Sarah's Spartan apartment. Full of warmth, toys scattered across the floor, and family photos lining the walls, each one a testament to a life filled with love. It's chaotic but comforting, a reminder of the life she fought for, even if it's one she sometimes feels disconnected from, an outsider looking in. "Mark can't wait to see you," Daniel says of his husband, his voice warm, his smile genuine. "He's finishing a project, but will be home soon." Sarah spends the afternoon with Mia, helping with a puzzle of a unicorn, the pieces scattered across the living room floor, their bright colors a stark contrast to the muted tones of her memories. Mia chatters about school, her friends, and her favorite stuffed animal, a bunny named Sprinkles, her innocence a balm to Sarah's frayed nerves, a reminder of why she fought, why she keeps fighting. Later, they play a racing game on the console, Mia giggling as she wins, her laughter a melody that fills the room, and Sarah finds herself laughing too, the sound foreign but welcome, a rare moment of lightness she clings to, knowing how fleeting such moments can be. But her mind drifts back to Bravo Company, to a night in the desert when they'd set up camp under a sky so clear the stars felt close enough to touch, their brilliance a stark contrast to the darkness below. Lieutenant Carter had pulled out a deck of cards, teaching them a game he called Desert Rummy. The rules absurdly complicated but the laughter genuine, a shared joy that bound them together. Reyes had sung an off-key rendition of a pop song, earning groans and thrown rations, his voice a defiant act of hope amidst the uncertainty of war, while Nguyen sketched the scene in a small notebook, his quiet focus a comfort to them all, his pencil scratching softly against the paper. That night, they'd been more than soldiers. They'd been a family, a bond forged in the crucible of shared hardship. The memory is bittersweet, the loss of that family a wound that never fully heals, a scar on her heart as real as the one on her cheek. Sarah blinks, pulling herself back to the present as Mia tugs at her sleeve, asking for another round of the game, her small hand warm against Sarah's. She nods, forcing a smile, but the ache remains, a quiet reminder of all she's lost. At 6:30 p.m., the doorbell rings as Daniel cooks dinner, the smell of roasted chicken and garlic filling the house, a comforting aroma that contrasts with the tension Sarah still carries. Probably Mark forgetting his key. He calls from the kitchen, his tone light, his voice muffled by the sizzle of the pan. Sarah opens the door, expecting her brother-in-law, her shoulders relaxing at the thought of Mark's familiar smile, his easy humor a balm to her nerves. Instead, Ethan stands there with an older man, his father, Dr. Thomas Harper, a physician with graying hair and a kind but serious demeanor, his eyes carrying a weight that Sarah recognizes instantly, the weight of someone who's seen too much. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Thomas Harper, and this is my son, Ethan. There was an incident on the train." Sarah tenses, arms crossed, her guard up as the memory of Ethan's taunts floods back, the sting of his words as fresh as if he'd just spoken them. "The driver is my patient at the University Medical Center. He told me how Ethan and his friends treated you. I'm ashamed. May we speak?" Sarah hesitates, the unexpected visit catching her off guard, her mind racing with questions. Why would they come here? How did they even find her? What could they possibly want? She glances back into the house, where Mia is humming to herself, oblivious to the tension, her small voice a soft melody that grounds Sarah. "Daniel, we have guests. I'll talk outside," she calls, her voice steady but her heart pounding, a rhythm she hasn't felt since her last patrol. She steps onto the porch, the cool evening air a sharp contrast to the warmth inside, and faces them, her posture rigid, her scar itching under the weight of their gazes. Thomas looks pained, his hands clasped tightly in front of him as he glances between Sarah and his son, his expression a mix of regret and determination. "I apologize for Ethan's behavior. That's not how he was raised," he says, his voice low, sincere, but heavy with the weight of his son's actions. Sarah nods stiffly, her arms still crossed, her mistrust evident, her body braced as if for battle. "Thank you. But why come here? How did you find me? Her voice is sharp, her eyes narrowing as she searches Thomas's face for answers. Thomas explains, his tone careful, as if he's navigating a minefield, his words chosen with precision. The driver mentioned you were met by your brother. I recognize Daniel from the PDA. Ethan attends Squirrel Hill Academy with his older son. Sarah frowns, still wary, her mind piecing together the connection, the pieces falling into place like a puzzle she didn't know she was solving. Daniel had mentioned the PDA, the community events he and Mark attended for their older son, Caleb, but the coincidence unnerves her, a reminder of how small the world can be. Thomas nudges Ethan, his hand firm on the boy's shoulder, his touch a silent command. Go on, son. Ethan looks up, his green eyes meeting hers, his voice shaky, the bravado from the train replaced by something raw, something vulnerable. I'm sorry for what I said. It was stupid and mean, he says, his cheeks flushing with shame, his gaze dropping to the ground as he scuffs his sneaker against the porch, the sound a soft scrape in the quiet evening. Sarah studies him. The apology seems genuine, but there's more, a tension in Thomas's posture that suggests this isn't just about an apology, a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. She softens slightly, her military training kicking in, reading the situation like she once read a battlefield, her instincts telling her there's more to this story. Thank you, Ethan. I appreciate you coming to say that, she says, her voice softening, her guard lowering just enough to let the conversation continue. Thomas's voice lowers, his tone shifting, a mix of reverence and urgency that catches Sarah off guard. When the driver mentioned your medallion and scar, it felt familiar. What was your unit, and when were you in Helmand? Sarah's guard rises, the unexpected question triggering a flood of adrenaline, her body tensing as if preparing for an attack, her heart racing as memories she's fought to bury rise to the surface. Bravo Company, 2008 to 2011. 1. Her voice is clipped, her eyes narrowing as she studies Thomas, searching for his intent, her hands tightening on the doorframe. Thomas takes a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly, as if he's mustering the courage to speak, his eyes glistening with the weight of what he's about to say. In October 2010, an outpost near Lashkar Gah was attacked. A convoy delivering medical supplies was hit. He says, his voice soft but heavy, each word a stone dropped into the still waters of Sarah's mind. Sarah's stomach drops, the words pulling her back to that day, the memories she spent years trying to bury rushing to the surface like a tidal wave. The deafening explosion, the choking dust, the screams in English and Pashto blending into a cacophony of terror, the heat of the blast searing her skin. She remembers the weight of the man she dragged to safety, his blood soaking her uniform, the bullets whizzing past as she ran back for the others, the blinding pain as the secondary ID detonated, the world going black. How do you know that? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper, her hands gripping the doorframe for support, her knees trembling as the past and present collide. I was there, Thomas says softly, his voice thick with emotion, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, his hands clasped tightly as if to keep himself grounded. I worked for a medical NGO. Our vehicle was caught in the crossfire. Sarah's knees weaken, the image of a man in a tattered gray jacket, blood streaming down his face, flashing in her mind with vivid clarity, the memory so sharp it steals her breath. She remembers his weight as she dragged him 150 yards to safety, her own legs screaming in protest, the adrenaline numbing the pain until the explosion took it away for good, the moment she knew she'd never walk the same again. You saved me. Thomas continues, his voice trembling, breaking on the words, a tear escaping down his cheek. You pulled me from the wreckage under fire, dragged me to safety. Then you went back for the others. That's when the secondary IED detonated. Sarah finishes, her voice hollow, the memory so vivid she can feel the heat on her face, the taste of ash in her mouth. I woke up in Germany 4 days later, missing my leg, with this scar. Ethan stares, pale, his mouth slightly open, the reality of her words sinking in, his earlier cruelty a distant memory in the face of her sacrifice. Thomas's eyes glisten, a tear escaping as he speaks, his voice raw, filled with a gratitude that's been years in the making. I never knew your name. I tried to find you, but the chaos. When the driver described you, The prosthetic, the scar, the medallion. I knew, he says, his voice steady now, but heavy with emotion, the weight of a debt he can never repay. Sarah's emotions churn, shock, disbelief, and a quiet relief that washes over her like a wave, a balm to wounds she thought would never heal. In years of therapy, she'd never met those she saved, never had closure for the lives she couldn't save, the faces that haunted her dreams. She thinks of the two medics she couldn't reach, their screams echoing in her nightmares, the civilian woman whose hand she held as she died, whispering thanks in broken English, her eyes filled with gratitude even as the light faded. "You survived," she whispers, the words a lifeline, grounding her in the moment, a confirmation of the good she did amidst the chaos. "Because of you," Thomas replies, his voice steady now, filled with gratitude, his eyes locked on hers. "I came home, rebuilt my life, raised Ethan, all because you risked yours for a stranger." Ethan's tears fall silently, his shoulders shaking as he wipes his face with his sleeve, the weight of his earlier cruelty crashing down on him, a bitter realization of the pain he caused. "And I mocked you," he chokes out, his voice cracking, his hands trembling as he buries his face in them, shame consuming him. Sarah sees Ethan differently now, not a bully, but a boy grappling with a harsh truth, his world suddenly far more complicated than he'd ever imagined, his innocence shattered by the reality of her sacrifice. "You couldn't have known," she says gently, her voice soft but firm, the same tone she once used to comfort a frightened soldier in the field, a tone that speaks of understanding and forgiveness. "But you see the weight of your words now, don't you?" Ethan nods, wiping his face, his eyes red but earnest, a spark of determination in them, a promise to be better. "I never thought about what veterans go through. Dad never talks about Afghanistan," he says, his voice small, his gaze dropping to the ground, the shame still heavy on his shoulders. Thomas sighs, resting a hand on Ethan's shoulder, his touch both comforting and heavy with regret, his own guilt evident in the lines of his face. "Maybe that's my fault. Some things are hard to share, but that's no excuse for disrespect," he says, his voice low, a father acknowledging his own shortcomings. Thomas pauses, his gaze distant, and Sarah senses there's more to his story, a deeper layer to the man standing before her. "After you saved me," he begins, his voice low, "I spent months in recovery, first in Germany, then back in the States. I'd wake up screaming, the sound of that explosion in my ears, the guilt of surviving when my colleagues didn't eating me alive." He swallows hard, his hand tightening on Ethan's shoulder, his knuckles white with the effort to keep his composure. "I had a photo of Ethan. He was just a baby then. I'd stare at it every day, promising I'd be the father he deserved, the man you gave me a chance to be," he says, his voice breaking, a tear slipping down his cheek. The memory is raw as if it happened yesterday. Sarah's throat tightens, the image of Thomas clutching that photo hitting her hard, a mirror to her own struggles. She thinks of her own recovery, waking up in that hospital bed, the sterile smell of antiseptic, the empty space where her leg should have been, the mirror reflecting a face she barely recognized, the scar a permanent reminder of her failure to save everyone. She'd questioned everything then, her purpose, her worth, whether she could ever be whole again, her nights filled with nightmares of Hellman, her days with the quiet despair of a life altered forever. Hearing Thomas's story, she feels a connection, a shared survival that transcends the years between them, a bond forged in the fire of that day. Daniel opens the door, concerned, his apron still on, a wooden spoon in his hand, the smell of dinner wafting out into the evening air. "Everything okay?" he asks, his voice tinged with worry, his eyes darting between Sarah and the strangers on his porch. Sarah exhales, her breath shaky but her resolve firm, a decision made in the space of a heartbeat. "Yes, let's invite the Harpers to dinner. We have a lot to discuss," she says, her voice steady, a quiet strength in her words, a strength that's carried her through war and will carry her through this night. Dinner starts awkwardly, Mark arriving to a table of unexpected guests, his confusion evident as he sets down his briefcase, his brow furrowing as he takes in the scene. Mia, sensing the tension, stays quiet, her eyes wide as she clutches her stuffed bunny, Sprinkles. her small fingers gripping the plush toy as if it can shield her from the unease in the room. But as Thomas shares his story, his work with Doctors Without Borders, his recovery, the nightmares that lingered after Hellman, the mood softens, the warmth of the meal, and the shared humanity breaking down barriers, the clink of cutlery and the soft murmur of voices filling the space. He recounts a moment from his recovery, staring at a photo of his newborn son, vowing to be the father Ethan deserved, a promise made possible by Sarah's courage, his voice trembling as he speaks, the gratitude evident in every word. He speaks of the first time he walked again, the physical therapy that reminded him of Sarah's own journey, though he didn't know her then, only the soldier who'd saved him, a faceless hero who'd given him a future. Ethan, mostly silent, watches Sarah with awe and guilt, his earlier arrogance replaced by a quiet introspection, his green eyes wide as he takes in her every word. Later, in a private moment, he slips into the living room, where a small box of his father's keepsakes sits on a shelf, the wood worn from years of handling. He opens it, pulling out an old photo of Thomas in Afghanistan, standing with his NGO team, smiling despite the exhaustion in his eyes, the desert stretching endlessly behind them. The reality of his father's survival, and Sarah's role in it, hits him like a wave, and he sits heavily on the couch, the photo trembling in his hands, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He thinks of his words on the train, the cruelty he'd thrown so carelessly, and shame washes over him, a bitter taste in his mouth, a realization that he's been blind to the stories around him. He vows to himself to be better, to understand the stories behind the people he meets, to never again judge so quickly, his resolve a quiet promise to the man he wants to become. Sarah breaks the silence at the table, her voice gentle but direct, pulling Ethan back into the moment, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of his emotions. "Ethan, what do you want to do after school?" she asks, her tone encouraging, a teacher guiding a student, her hazel eyes warm with understanding. He blinks, caught off guard, his mind still reeling from the photo, his hands still clutching the faded image. I might study medicine, like Dad. Or maybe law. I'm not sure," he says, his voice small, uncertain, but there's a sincerity in it that wasn't there before, a glimmer of hope in his uncertainty. "Both can serve others," Sarah notes, her tone encouraging, a smile tugging at her lips, her scar softening in the warm light of the dining room. "Is that what you do, help people?" he asks, his curiosity genuine now, his earlier mockery a distant memory, replaced by a desire to understand. "I'm a physical therapist at the VA in Cincinnati," she replies, her voice steady, proud, a quiet strength in her words. "I help veterans with injuries, amputations, spinal damage, brain trauma. The body can heal, but it needs guidance," she says, her words a testament to her own journey, a journey of healing that's far from over. Ethan's voice is small but genuine, his eyes wide with admiration, a newfound respect in his gaze. "That's incredible," he says, his voice barely above a whisper, the words a bridge between them, a connection forged in the aftermath of his regret. As the night unfolds, Ethan opens up, asking about Sarah's service, her prosthetic, her scar, not with cruelty, but curiosity, a desire to understand the woman he'd so wrongly judged, his questions tentative but earnest. Sarah shares a memory of her lowest moment post-injury, staring in a hospital mirror in Germany, her face bandaged, her leg gone, wondering if she'd ever feel whole again, if she'd ever be more than the scars she carried, the reflection a stranger she couldn't recognize. The vulnerability resonates with Ethan, who begins to see her not as a target, but a hero, a woman who'd given everything for others, including his father, a woman whose strength is as much in her survival as in her sacrifice. When the Harpers leave, Thomas shakes Sarah's hand, his grip firm, his eyes filled with gratitude, a silent promise to honor her sacrifice in the life he leads. "I can't thank you enough for what you did," he says, his voice breaking, the words heavy with years of unspoken thanks. Sarah shakes her head, her voice soft but resolute, her scar a testament to her journey. "It was my duty." "No," Thomas insists, his voice firm, "you went beyond duty. You could have walked away. No one would have judged you," he says, his words a recognition of her courage, a courage that shaped his life in ways she never knew. Ethan steps forward, hesitant, his hands shoved into his pockets, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes red from tears he's tried to hide. "Sergeant Mitchell, I'm so sorry for the train. For everything," he says, his voice trembling. The apology a weight lifted from his shoulders, a step toward redemption. Sarah meets his gaze, seeing the boy he could become, the potential for growth she's seen in so many veterans she's helped, her heart softening at his sincerity. "What will you do about it? Regret without change is empty. How will you grow?" she asks, her voice gentle but firm, a challenge wrapped in understanding. Ethan thinks, his brow furrowing, his determination growing, a spark of resolve in his eyes. "I'll treat everyone with respect, and I'll stop my friends when they're mean. Maybe I could volunteer at the VA, if that's okay," he says, his voice earnest, a promise to himself as much as to her. Sarah nods, a small smile tugging at her lips, her scars softening in the dim light of the porch, a symbol of survival and hope. "That's a strong start. I'd welcome you there," she says, her words a bridge to a future where he can make amends, a future she hopes he'll embrace. After the Harpers leave, Daniel wraps Sarah in a hug, his arms a comforting anchor in the storm of emotions she's navigated. "That was heavy. Are you okay?" he asks, his voice soft, his eyes searching hers for the truth. Sarah pauses, then smiles softly, the weight on her chest lighter than it's been in years, a clarity settling over her like a warm blanket. "I feel lighter than I have in years," she says, her voice steady, a quiet peace in her words, a peace she hasn't known since before Hellman. That night, in the guest room, Sarah lies awake, reflecting, the soft glow of a lamp casting shadows on the wall, the hum of the house a soothing backdrop. For so long, she'd questioned her sacrifice, the leg she lost, the career that ended, the nightmares that lingered, the scars that marked her body and soul. Seeing Thomas alive, raising a son, brings a clarity she'd chased for years, a clarity that heals wounds she thought would never close. It's not about whether the cost was worth it. It's about the lives touched, the connections forged in chaos, the ripple effects of courage that echo through time. Her scars, once marks of pain, now feel like badges of survival, bridges to a new purpose, a purpose she's only beginning to understand. 3 weeks later, back in Cincinnati, Sarah receives a letter from Squirrel Hill Academy, the envelope crisp and official, a stark contrast to the chaos of her memories. It's an invitation to speak at an assembly about military service and resilience, accompanied by a note from Ethan, his handwriting neat but earnest. "Sergeant Mitchell, the headmaster approved our Veterans Awareness Project. My friends from the train want to apologize in person. It'd be an honor to hear your story." Sarah dials the school, accepting the invitation, her voice steady as she speaks to the headmaster, her mind already planning her speech. She'll speak on the hidden stories of veterans, hoping to inspire students to see beyond appearances, to understand the cost of service, the value of respect. What about you, viewer? Have you ever misjudged someone, only to learn their story? Share your experience in the comments. We'd love to hear how this story resonates with you, how it's touched your heart or changed your perspective. Sarah realizes her purpose extends beyond the VA, beyond the physical healing she facilitates. It's about teaching the next generation the cost and value of service, about showing them that scars aren't just wounds. They're proof of survival, the start of something new, a testament to resilience that can inspire others. A poem echoes in her mind, its words a fitting close to her journey. Wounds linger, some seen, some hidden deep. Time heals, but marks whisper of fire, of bravery, of pain. Words cut sharper than steel, judgments blind to truth. Behind every scar, a battle fought. Behind every stranger, a lesson unsought. These scars map our journey, bridges through the flames. Not marks of defeat, but proof we endure. Every fight matters, keeping hope alive. One act of courage echoes through time, weaving lives unseen. Heroes walk among us, their deeds extraordinary in the ordinary. Sacrifice binds us, in ways we may never see. The stranger you save might save another, like me. This is the power of stories. They remind us to look deeper, to honor the unseen, to connect with the humanity in everyone we meet. Daily Narrated Stories brings you tales like Sarah's to inspire, uplift, and connect us, to remind us of the courage that lives in ordinary moments, the heroism that goes unnoticed. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers. Don't miss your chance to join our community, to be part of something that celebrates the stories that matter. Subscribe now, comment your thoughts, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Time's ticking. Be part of something transformative today, and let's honor the heroes among us together.